March 2020. South Korea, over 260,000 people were watching, not a TV show. Not a sports event. Not a concert, they were watching women and girls being blackmailed and tortured on camera, and they were paying for it. The youngest victim was in middle school. When the story broke, nearly 3 million South Koreans signed a petition in just 72 hours. It became the largest petition in the country's history. They demanded one thing: show us their faces, because what investigators discovered wasn't happening on the dark web. It wasn't hidden in some obscure corner of the internet, it was happening on Telegram. A messaging app. One that millions of people use every single day. This is the story of how 2 college students exposed it, how journalists risked their lives to investigate it, and how an entire nation rose up to demand justice. Welcome to Case Unknown, where we investigate the crimes that changed nations, the cases that exposed hidden evils, and the stories that demand to be told. I'm your guide through the darkest chapters of true crime. Today's case shocked 51 million people and exposed a digital exploitation network so massive, it forced an entire country to change its laws. This is the Nth Room case. Before we continue, this episode discusses digital sexual exploitation and blackmail involving minors. We won't include graphic details, but the subject matter is serious. If you're under 16, please listen with a trusted adult. Resources for victims are in the description. To understand how this happened, you need to understand Telegram. If you've never used it, Telegram is a messaging app. Think of it like WhatsApp or Signal. It's fast, free, and most importantly, it's encrypted. That means your messages are scrambled into code. Even Telegram itself can't read them. It's designed to protect privacy. To keep journalists safe from authoritarian governments. To let whistleblowers share information without fear, but like any tool, it can be used for good, or for evil. In South Korea, Telegram was everywhere. Students used it to share class notes. Activists used it to organize protests. By 2019, it had become one of the country's most downloaded apps. And hidden inside this ordinary app, in chat rooms that required special links to access, something horrifying was growing. The story begins in the summer of 2019. 2 university students, operating under the code name Team Flame, were researching online sex trafficking for a college project. They were aspiring journalists, interested in digital crime. What they found went far beyond their assignment. Buried in obscure corners of the internet, they discovered references to numbered rooms on Telegram. Room 1. Room 2. Room 3. People called them the Nth Rooms. In mathematics, N represents an unknown number. Any number. These rooms seemed endless. Team Flame created fake accounts and managed to gain access. What they saw inside shocked them. The rooms were filled with videos. Hundreds of them. Women and girls were being forced to perform degrading acts on camera. But these weren't random videos stolen from the internet, they were custom-made. Requested by members. Filmed specifically for these rooms, and the victims, they had things carved into their skin. Words. Slave. Sometimes their names. Sometimes the usernames of specific members who had paid extra. The youngest victim Team Flame identified was in middle school. 13 or 14 years old. But here's what made it even more disturbing. The chat rooms weren't small. Some had thousands of members. And they were active. People were chatting, requesting specific acts, rating the videos, sharing tips on how to avoid detection. This wasn't a hidden corner of the dark web. This was happening on a mainstream app that your friends probably had on their phones. Team Flame knew they had to report this. But who would believe them? They were just college students. They had no evidence they could legally possess. The content itself was criminal to download, so they compiled what information they could, descriptions, screenshots with faces blurred, user statistics, and they sent it to journalists. One outlet picked it up. The Hankyorri, a progressive newspaper known for investigative journalism. A reporter named Kim Won read their submission, and he decided to investigate further. Kim Won spent months researching. He created anonymous accounts. He tracked the evolution of these rooms. He interviewed digital forensics experts. In November 2019, he published his findings. The article laid out the structure of the nth rooms. How they operated. How many victims there appeared to be. How the operators used blackmail and threats. The article should have sparked national outrage. Instead, it barely made a ripple. A few people shared it online. Some expressed disgust. But South Korea was dealing with other major news stories at the time. The article came and went, and then Kim Won's life changed. Within days of publication, his personal information appeared in the telegram rooms. His home address. Photos of his family. His wife's workplace. His children's school. Messages flooded in. Death threats. Promises to find him. Descriptions of what they would do to him and his family if he continued investigating. Kim Won had a choice. He could stop. Protect his family. Let the story die. He chose to keep digging. By early 2020, Kim and a colleague named Oh Yun Seo discovered something that made the original nth rooms look almost small by comparison. A new operator had emerged. More organized. More brutal. More profitable. He had a username. Doctor. In Korean. Baksa, and Doctor's operation was different. He wasn't just sharing existing content or running small chat rooms. He was building an empire. Let me explain how Doctor's system worked, because understanding the method helps us understand how these crimes happen in the digital age. It started with a simple tweet. Doctor would create fake accounts on Twitter, posing as a modeling agency or talent scout. He'd post job opportunities. Looking for models. Good pay. Flexible hours. No experience necessary. For young women in South Korea, where beauty standards are intense and the modeling industry seems glamorous, these posts seemed legitimate. They would apply. And Doctor would respond professionally. He'd send them a contract. Ask them to fill out personal information, name, social security number, address, phone number. Emergency contacts, everything you'd need for a real job. Once he had that information, the trap began to close. He'd ask for sample photos. Headshots. Full body shots. Nothing inappropriate at first. Just standard modeling photos, then he'd ask for more. A little more revealing. Swimsuit photos maybe. Athletic wear. The client wants to see your figure, and eventually, he'd cross the line. Asking for explicit photos, most women would refuse at this point. They'd realize something was wrong. They'd try to back out. That's when Doctor would reveal what he really was. He'd threaten to post everything. The application with their social security number. The photos they'd already sent. Their home address. Their family's information, but he didn't just threaten to post it to the internet. He'd post their address directly into chat rooms with thousands of members. He'd tell these members exactly where the victim lived. The psychological terror was complete. These women knew that thousands of strangers, men who had paid money to watch exploitation, now knew their names, their faces, and how to find them. So they complied. At first with photos. Then videos. Then live streams where members could request specific acts in real time. Doctor had created a system of absolute control. And he was making serious money from it. Members paid in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, Ethereum, amounts ranging from 200,000 won to 1.5 million won. That's roughly 170 to 1,200 US dollars. For access to different tiers of rooms, the higher you paid, the more extreme the content. The more control you had over what victims were forced to do. Between 2018 and 2020, Doctor made approximately 180 million Korean won. That's about $161,000. From the systematic torture and exploitation of women and girls. And he wasn't working alone. There was a hierarchy. At the top was the original creator, a user calling himself God. His real name was Moon Hyung-wook. He was 24 years old, a college student studying information systems. Moon had created the first nth rooms back in 2018. Moon's method was slightly different. He'd targeted women who had posted on Twitter looking for easy money. He'd offer them a small payment, $50, to complete a mission. The mission would be simple at first. Take a photo of yourself holding a sign with a specific phrase. Once they did it, he'd pay them, then the next mission would be slightly more compromising. And the next. And the next. Until he had enough material to blackmail them. Moon coerced at least 21 women and girls into sharing nearly 3,800 sexually explicit videos, but Dr. took Moon's blueprint and industrialized it. More victims. More rooms. More sophisticated operations. By March 2020, at least 74 victims had been identified in Doctor's rooms alone. 16 were minors. The youngest was 14 years old, and the member count. Doctor's main room had 15,000 paying members, but the total across all nth rooms? Over 260,000 participants. To put that in perspective, that's like filling Madison Square Garden 13 times over. That's more people than attend most NFL games, 250,000 people, paying to watch exploitation, on an app they probably also use to chat with their friends. By March 2020, Kim Won and his colleague Oh Yun SEO had compiled a devastating report. They had traced Doctor's identity. They had documentation of the scale. They had interviewed digital forensics experts who explained how the cryptocurrency payments could be traced. On March 18, 2020, multiple news outlets published the full story simultaneously. South Korea erupted. The same day, a petition appeared on the Blue House website. In South Korea, citizens can petition the president's office directly online. If a petition gets 200,000 signatures within 30 days, the government is required to respond. This petition demanded the identities of Doctor and all nth room members be publicly revealed before conviction. In South Korean law, criminals' identities are typically protected until after conviction. But the petition argued that the scale of this crime warranted an exception. Within 24 hours, 1 million people had signed. Within 48 hours, 2 million. Within 72 hours, 2.7 million signatures. It shattered every record for South Korea's petition system. It remains the largest petition in the platform's history. Students organized protests. Women's rights groups held candlelight vigils. Celebrities spoke out. Even K-pop idols, who typically avoid political statements, expressed their horror and support for victims. President Moon Jae-in called the nth room case brutal acts that destroy the life of a person. He ordered the National Police Agency to identify every single participant, regardless of how minor their involvement. On March 23, 2020, the Seoul Broadcasting System made a historic decision. They revealed Doctor's identity before his conviction. This had never been done in South Korea for a sexual crime. The legal precedent didn't exist, but the public pressure was undeniable. The scale demanded unprecedented action. His name was Joo-bin. He was 25 years old. A recent graduate from a local university where he studied information and communications. He looked ordinary. Like someone you might sit next to on the subway. The next day, March 24th, police paraded Cho in front of cameras as they transferred him to prosecutors. Hundreds of reporters gathered. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. Cho wore a hood and mask, head bowed. When reporters asked if he had anything to say to his victims, he responded with a statement that still chills people today. Thank you for putting the brakes on the life of a devil that could not be stopped. Not an apology. Not remorse. A thank you for stopping him. The investigation moved quickly. South Korean cryptocurrency exchanges agreed to cooperate with authorities, something they'd never done to this extent before. Here's how they caught so many people. Every cryptocurrency transaction leaves a trail. It's not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Your identity is hidden behind an account number, but every transaction is permanently recorded on a public ledger called a blockchain. When someone bought Bitcoin to pay for nth room access, they had to buy it from somewhere. Usually a cryptocurrency exchange. Those exchanges, by law, have to verify identity. Name, bank account, phone number, so investigators traced the Bitcoin payments backward. They found the exchanges. Got warrants for account information. And suddenly, they had names. By April 27, 2020, almost 40 people had been identified through cryptocurrency traces alone. In May 2020, police arrested Moon Hyun-wook, God, the man who started it all. By the end of 2020, the numbers were staggering. 3,757 people had been arrested in direct connection to the case. 245 were sentenced to prison time, the average age of suspects. 21 years old, let that sink in. College age. The same age as the students who first exposed the rooms. On November 26, 2020, a Seoul court delivered its verdict for Joo-bin, guilty on 14 counts. Blackmail. Sexual exploitation. Distributing obscene material involving minors. And more. The sentence, 40 years in prison. Additionally, Cho would have to wear an electronic ankle monitoring bracelet for 30 years after release. He was fined $9,600, though victims have requested far higher amounts in compensation. Prosecutors had asked for life imprisonment. Some victims' advocates said Cho and his co-conspirators deserved 2,000 years, 1 year for each major victim and participant. The judge acknowledged the severity but explained that under current South Korean law, 40 years was the maximum sentence available for these specific charges combined. In February 2021, courts added 5 more years for concealing criminal proceeds. Cho's final sentence, 42 years in prison. He won't be eligible for release until he's 67 years old. Moon Hyun-wook received 34 years. The Supreme Court upheld both sentences in 2021, rejecting their appeals, but the case didn't end with prison sentences. The South Korean government realized their laws were inadequate. Before the Nth Room case, possessing or watching illegally filmed sexual content wasn't illegal. Only creating and distributing it was punishable. That meant 260,000 participants, the watchers, the payers, the people who requested specific acts, most of them faced no legal consequences. In April 2020, the National Assembly passed emergency legislation. The laws became known as the Nth Room Prevention Law. Now, anyone who possesses, purchases, stores, or watches illegally filmed sexual content can face up to 3 years in prison or a fine of 30 million won, about $25,000. Telegram also made changes. They added more robust reporting systems. They began cooperating more closely with law enforcement in extreme cases. They clarified that encryption doesn't protect illegal activity from investigation. But here's the uncomfortable truth that remains, according to journalist Oh Yun-seo, who continued following the case after publication, victims were still fighting in 2021 and beyond. The videos and images from the Nth Rooms keep resurfacing. They appear on different platforms, different websites, different countries' servers. Victims spend hours every day reporting content, sending takedown requests, trying to erase their exploitation from the internet. But digital content never truly disappears. It's copied, re-uploaded, traded in private circles. Some of the material is still being sold on illegal sites around the world. The victims of the Nth Room don't just carry psychological trauma. They carry the knowledge that their worst moments are permanently circulating online. That someone, somewhere, might recognize them. That their children might one day find these images. This is the ongoing reality of digital exploitation. There is no final victory. Only continuous vigilance. The Nth Room case forced South Korea to confront uncomfortable questions. How did 260,000 people participate in something so horrific? These weren't all criminals with prior records. They were students, office workers, professionals. Some were teenagers. Some were in their 50s. What makes someone decide to pay money to watch another human being suffering? Psychologists who studied the case point to several factors. The anonymity of the internet. The psychological distance of watching through a screen. The normalization that occurs in chat rooms where thousands of others are doing the same thing. When you're surrounded by people participating in something terrible, it starts to feel normal. Expected. The moral weight diffuses across the crowd, but the case also revealed something powerful about collective action. 2 college students. Team Flame could have walked away. They could have decided it was too big, too dangerous, not their problem. They didn't. Kim Won could have stopped when his family was threatened. When his personal information was leaked. When his safety was compromised. He didn't. The 2.7 million people who signed their petition could have assumed someone else would take action. That their one signature wouldn't matter. They didn't, and because of these individual decisions to speak up, to investigate, to demand justice, laws changed. Precedents were set. Hundreds of victims were identified and given support. Thousands of perpetrators faced consequences. Joo-bin is currently serving his sentence at a correctional facility outside Seoul. He'll be 67 years old before he's even eligible for parole. Moon Hyung-wook is serving 34 years. Both men will spend the majority of their remaining lives in prison. The youngest victims of the Nth Room case are now in their late teens or early 20s. Some have received counseling and legal support. Others have chosen to remain completely anonymous, trying to rebuild their lives away from public attention. They deserve privacy. They deserve dignity. They deserve the space to heal. The Nth Room case is closed, but cases like it still exist, in encrypted apps. In hidden corners of the internet. Waiting to be exposed. This is Case Unknown. Where we don't look away from the darkness, we investigate it. If this investigation resonated with you, if you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us uncover more cases that demand justice. If you or someone you know has experienced online exploitation, resources are linked in the description below. Organizations that provide support, counseling, and legal assistance. Next episode on Case Unknown, a killer who taunted police for 30 years, until DNA technology he didn't know existed finally caught him. Until then, remember, the unknown is only unknown, until someone asks the right questions. Thank you for listening. This is Case Unknown.